All right, welcome everybody. So this is how does Halacha function, part 6. We're going over Hilchot Mamrim, chapter 6, and I'm going to try and get through it quickly, and then we could probably do chapter 7 as well, so we can finish the series instead of dragging it out another week, because then we can get on to other things. So, okay, let's go to share screen, share sound. Gonna need that. Okay, everybody see Hilchot Mamrim, chapter 6 up here?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to try and read it from the book. So if I forget to scroll on the screen for people following along on the computer, just let me know so I can scroll. All right. So Halacha 1. Honoring one's father and mother is a positive commandment of great importance, as is fearing one's father and mother. The Torah equates honor and fear of one's parents with the honor and fear of God Himself. Exodus 20:12 states, honor your father and mother. Proverbs states, honor God from your wealth. Similarly, with regard to one's father and mother, Leviticus states, a person must fear his mother and father. And Deuteronomy 6:13 states, and you shall fear God your Lord, just as he commands us to honor and fear his great name. So too, he commands us to honor and fear our parents. I like how he says here that honoring your mother and father is attributed to just like honoring God. God is the creator; He gave us creation. So in that manner, so did our parents. You know, they brought us into this world, so they're kind of doing the same thing that He did. You know, I recently heard that the Chabad Rebbe, I'm not Chabad, but Yitzhak Britowitz, he taught law at Harvard Law School, and he was saying how, in America, there's a popular saying that we're supposed to have church and separation of church and state, which is not actually true. I guess the way it's written in the Constitution is that Congress shall enact no law to make any religion the official religion of America. So I guess the ruling went to the Supreme Court because we used to have prayer in school. Every morning you would open up with a prayer. So I guess in 1963, I think, it went to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court had an interpretation that if Congress shall enact no law, then therefore there must be some type of separation between church and state. But it's not actually in the Constitution that there's required to be. So the Chabad Rebbe, I guess, pointed to this ruling when they took the prayer out of schools and said that this is where the beginning of the downfall of society came from when they stopped having the prayer in school. And that the downfall of our society is something we're still struggling with today. But it's a bit of a contradiction to say, the Supreme Court said that we're supposed to have separation of church and state, but at the same time, all the coins have in God we trust on all the money that the government prints and accepts and pays with. Congress itself and the Supreme Court, they open up with a prayer. They have this stuff on the
Well,
bill.
to be fair, the Federal Reserve is not part of the government, right? It's an entity. It's not. It's a private corporation that is separate from the government. It's the bank that runs the government.
Yeah, I guess you could argue that way. But either way, I tend to agree that when you just start the day every morning with a prayer, it at least reminds you that you're not the one that this is all about. There's someone above watching. But as far as the downfall of the society, you've removed God, and this is what this is kind of saying, that if you're not going to honor your parents, it's like you're not honoring God. We have to keep this as a society. We have to keep certain fundamentals, and this is one of them. I mean, this is one of the things you could be executed for, not honoring your parents. And we're going to see that as we move on. But I thought that was an interesting thing to point out. All right. So we have to honor and fear our parents just like we do Hashem. All right. Halakha 2. A person who curses his father or mother is executed by stoning, and a person who blasphemes God is executed by stoning. Thus, the punishment for the two is equated. A father is mentioned before a mother with regard to honor, and a a father, a mother, a father is mentioned before a mother with regard to honor, and a mother is mentioned before a father with regard to fear, to teach that they are both equal with regard to fear and honor. And there's long shiurim about why did we list it this way versus the other way, but the Talmud says that a child has a tendency to honor his mother more than his father. So therefore, the father is mentioned first with regard to this mitzvah, and the tendency is to fear his father. With regard to that mitzvah, his mother is given first mention. Okay. Halacha 3. What is meant by fear and what is meant by honor? Fear is expressed by not standing in his place, not sitting in his place, not contradicting his words, nor offering an opinion that outweighs his. So on this one, the book that I'm reading, the translation is on a responsum from the Rambam, where it says, you cannot offer an opinion that outweighs his. You know, if he gives you a ruling on something, you can't come and say, well, actually, I mean, who are you to do this to your father? So that's the translation that we're using in this book. Others rendered the term as supporting his words, for supporting his father's decision implies that his support enhances his father's words. This is a mark of disrespect. So, in other words, if you're saying the same thing that he's saying, he's already answered the question, whoever's asking. He doesn't need you involved. He doesn't need you to come and provide the support because he's the older one, he's the wise one, he's the one that's raised you. So he can handle the situation. He doesn't need the backup unless he's asking for it. So then the Shulchan Aruch looks at this discrepancy. Is this line in the text saying that you can't offer an opinion that outweighs his, contradicts his, or is it saying you can't agree with them? This could have to do with status. Say you're bigger hacham than your father is. So the Shulchan Aruch looked at this discrepancy, and it mentions that this applies only in his father's presence, because that's the mark of disrespect. If you're outside your father's presence, you may differ with him or justify his father's opinion. Either way. It would appear that Rambam would accept this distinction because we find that he did express different halakhic opinions than his own father. So if you're providing the support or disagreeing with your father in a separate conversation, then that would be allowed if it's not in his presence. I can sit here and tell you where there's things that I disagree with, Asher on. There's things that Asher's right about, but if he's the one leading the conversation, who am I to come, and say, well, I know better than you, or you should have articulated it this way. This is a better way to put it. Show the respect to the one that's above you. In this case, the father. But we're going to see it also applies to teachers. Okay, he should not call him by his name. Don't call your father Bill or whatever. He deserves more respect for that. Neither during his lifetime nor after his death. Instead, he should say, my father, my master. If his father or his teacher had the same name as others, he should call those other people by a different name. It appears to me that one should be careful only with regard to this matter, with regard to a name that is unusual and which is not used frequently by people. With regard to the names which people are generally called by contrast, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, and the like, popular names, one can call others by that name in any language at any time outside his father's presence without thinking anything of the matter. What is meant by honoring them? One should bring them food and drink, clothe them and cover them for their own resources. Whatever they need, that's what you should be doing for them. If a father does not have financial resources as a son does, the son is compelled, meaning the court can use physical force to force you to take care of your parents, to sustain him, his father, and his mother according to his capacity. he's compelled to sustain them from the money that he would have donated to charity. The Ramah adds, if he has ample resources, he should be cursed if he sustains his money from the charity. Meaning, if you have the money to take care of your father, you need to do that and don't subtract from the money the tzedakah you were doing already. He should take him out and bring him home and serve him in all the ways that he serves a teacher. Okay, Halacha 4. When a father was a student of his son, the father need not stand in the presence of his son. So the Shulchan Aruch says that a person must stand in his teacher's presence from the time he sees him until the time he passes from his vision. It actually says in the Shulchan Aruch, if a Torah scholar walks into the room, even if he's not your teacher, even if you know more than he does, even if you don't like the guy, you disagree with him, you're supposed to stand up as a sign of respect for the Torah. This guy is a Torah scholar. Even if you're on a higher level, it's still worthy of respect. So it's something to think about for all the people that are out there attacking other rabbis. Everybody claims to go by the Shulchan Aruch. So you bring this up and say, well, okay, if you don't like the guy, he is a scholar. He is a Torah giant. Do you feel it's appropriate to be attacking him? Oh, then they always want to justify why they're doing it. But here we see the same thing. Okay, if the father is a student of the son, the father automatically gets kavod, he gets honor and respect for being the father. But if the father is a student, which means the son is the one teaching the father, maybe the father's a Baal Teshuva, the son became religious, son becomes a rabbi. So now the father becomes religious. So the father is a student of the son. He does not need to stand in the presence of the son because he automatically gets that respect as a father. The son, by contrast, must stand before his father, even if he is his student. So even though you're the one teaching your father who doesn't know very much, you still have to stand in the presence of this guy. Someone that's not your father who doesn't know anything, you don't have to stand up when he walks in the room. Like I have to stand up when my students walk in and I'm teaching you guys, but even if your father is a student, he's still your father no matter what. Okay, a son is obligated to honor his father in other matters when he is carrying out his business and seeing to his concerns. What is implied? If a person went to a place because of his father's words, your father sent you to do something for him, he should not say, hurry and free me on my own account, or let me go on my own account. Don't just say, hey, listen, I'm busy, I got things to do, can we speed this up? Instead, hurry and free me because of my father. Let me go because of my father. By making such a statement that you're here because of your father, you're enhancing your father's prestige. Conversely, if you're unsure of whether speaking in the name of your father will not produce such a positive result, and certainly if you're certain it will not, then you should not make this type of request. So if you're dealing with a fellow religious person, like we were talking about being in community, somehow there's a problem if you order something online from the Judaica shop. You have to live in a community which has a local Judaica shop, according to what some person is giving their opinion, which every normal person disagrees with. If you're going in there and you're dealing with a religious person, you could say, my father asked me for this. This person understands the severity of honoring your mother and father. This is one of the Torah commandments. So he's going to be more inclined to be a part of this mitzvah. By helping you get you out of here quickly, I'm helping you honor your father. So I'm taking part of the mitzvah. This is a very meritorious thing to do. So that's why it's saying, let me go because of my father. And then if it's not going to help the situation, don't bring it up. This guy doesn't like your father, then you're sort of, bringing up bad memories. So don't do that. But it's a meritorious thing to do to honor your father. And this is saying to mention him that I'm doing this on his account, not mine. the other religious person is going to recognize, what a good thing it is that you're trying to do a mitzvah. So that's why it's saying to bring it up in that situation. You should always include in your words and statements that he is concerned with his father's honor and that he fears him. This also shows the Jew are a Torah keeping Jew by doing so. Okay, 5. A son is obligated to honor his father even after his death. What is implied? If he repeats a teaching in his father's name, he should not say, "This is what my father said." Instead, he should say, "This is what my father and my teacher, may I serve atonement for him," said. So this saying, "May I serve atonement to him," is granting more respect to him. It's like saying, "Any misfortune to be visited upon him in the spiritual realms be visited upon me." After 12 months, he says to him, "May he be remembered for the life of the world to come." The Shulchan Aruch says instead, he should say, "May his memory be blessed." It states that a combination of both expressions should be used. Okay, notice what it's hinting at here. Does anybody know? 12 months after he passed away? Anybody know what this is referencing?
Yeah. That's the art site.
Yes. So it goes to show Mourner's Kaddish it's a later thing that was added, but already in this time, at least the time of the Talmud, this was already a custom that was widespread because it's being mentioned, and Rambam is quoting what the Talmud says about it, giving us the halacha on it. So that's why they're saying, "May I serve as atonement for him." He's already passed on. So there's this notion that for the maximum that you could be in Gehenna is 12 months. We don't want to assume anyone is bad enough to do the whole 12 months, so we only say Mourner's Kaddish for 11. So this is saying during this period, this is why we're saying this. May I serve as atonement for him. You're trying to elevate his place in the spiritual world. And then at the end of the 12 months, as Moshe mentioned, this is Yartzeit. This is the 1 year anniversary of him passing. Okay, Halacha 6. Both a man and a woman are obligated to honor and fear their parents. It is only the man that has the capacity to do this, and a woman is subject to another's influence. Meaning her first obligation is to her husband. The Shulchan Aruch states that a woman is not obligated to honor her father while she is married for this reason. One might infer that she is liable to fear him even when married. Therefore, if she is divorced or widowed, they are both equal, or if her husband consents. Everybody clear what's going on here? Your husband takes the first precedence. This has some relevance because a woman is raised in her father's household, so she has a Mazorah coming from him. She's raised with their minhagim. But what happens if, let's say, she's Ashkenazi and now she has a Sephardic husband? Which nusach does she follow? She drops what she learned from her father and she adopts her husband's minhagim. So what happens if the husband and her they get divorced? Is her minhag, is her nusach, is her mazorah now what she had while she was married, or does it revert back to what it was before she got married, what she was raised with her father? So it depends. If she had children with the new husband, then this is the mazorah that she keeps, because this is what she's raising her children with. If she did not have children, then she reverts back to what she was raised with her father. So the husband coming first, it also plays a role. What if there's a fight? The husband doesn't want the in-laws to come over to the house, but she's like, "This is my father. What do I do? I can't disrespect my father. These are my parents, but I also have to honor my husband." So usually the understanding here is that the husband comes first. It's his house. You have to respect this. But the husband cannot prohibit the wife from going to visit the family at her parents. She can still honor her parents this way at their house. But when there's a debate about it, she's to stand by her husband. So that's why he's getting the priority here. This is what it means when it says, how did it articulate this? If the husband consents, her first obligation is to her husband. So he gets the priority over the parents. Um, Everybody understand that? Everybody with me? Halacha 7.
Word.
To what degree does the mitzvah of honoring one's father and one's mother extend? Even if one's parents takes his purse of gold and throws it into the sea in his presence, he should not embarrass them or shout or vent anger at them. Instead, he should accept the Torah's decree and remain silent. So we were just talking about, if I'm the husband, this is my household. I'm Mr. Man now. Okay. What about your parents? You still have to honor them. What if they're imposing their will on me? Do I have to tolerate this? Look at what it says. If you take your purse of gold, something very valuable, and throws it into the sea, you're never going to get this back. If you, in your presence, you should not embarrass them or shout or vent anger at them. You should not even verbally say, how dare you do this? These are your parents. This is the level of respect you have to show to them. Even if you disagree with the way you're being treated, you can't rise up against them. Remember, there's a death penalty in the land when we had a Sanhedrin. Even without striking them, just your speech can land you a death penalty when it comes to this, to not honoring your parents. To what degree does the mitzvah of fearing them extend? Even if one was wearing fine garments and sitting at the head of the community, if one's father and mother came, ripped the clothes, struck him on the head, and spat in his face, he should not embarrass them. Instead, he should remain silent and fear the King of Kings, who commanded them to conduct himself in this manner. Were a mortal king to decree something in which would cause him even more suffering, he would not be able to move a limb in protest. Certainly, this applies when the command emanates from he who spoke and caused the world to come into existence as he desired it. So think about this. You're the head of the Shabbat table. You're leading the services. You're doing whatever, and your parents come in, rip your clothes off in front of your community, struck you in the head, and spat in your face. You should not embarrass them. Instead, you should remain silent and fear the King of Kings. In this way, you're showing everybody that's watching, they're going to feel bad for you, what's happening to you in front of everyone, right? But you're going to show them cannot retaliate against your parents. They deserve this level of respect. This is how we are to behave according to Hashem, who gave us this mitzvah. And when it said something about kings, the King of Kings who commanded us to conduct ourselves in this manner, this is Hashem, were a mortal king to decree something which would cause even more suffering. So if you lived in a land where there was a physical king or the president of the United States or whatever, you would not be able to move a limb in protest because you would be afraid you would be jailed, you could be executed, but you could be executed, for treating your parents this way. So there's really no difference in that respect. So if a mortal king were to decree something which would cause him even more suffering, you would not be able to move a limb in protest. So then certainly this applies when the command comes from God. He who spoke and caused the world to come into existence as he desired it, this is Hashem. So how can you disrespect him and say, well, if I was afraid of a mortal king, I wouldn't be able to protest. But you, the creator of the world, you command us to behave this way. I don't think I need to listen. I think I can protest and I can be offended and I can embarrass my parents and yell at them in front of these people. Don't do it. It's very dangerous game that you're playing to engage in that type of chutzpah. Okay, halacha 8. Although these commands have been issued, a person is forbidden to lay a heavy yoke on his sons and be particular about their honoring him to the point that he presents an obstacle to them. So we're talking about the parents here in this one. It is forbidden to lay a heavy yoke on his sons and be particular about their honoring him to the point that he presents an obstacle to them. Don't abuse your children. Don't demand that they jump over obstacles, jump through hoops. Don't be overburdening to them. Say, it's appropriate to say, okay, you're going to call me sir, you know, what these types of things, but don't torture your children. Don't make it an obstacle for them. Instead, he should forego his honor and ignore any affronts, or if a father desires to forego his honor, he may. So what does it mean? You may forego this honor. You can. If you want to tell your children, okay, the halacha is when I walk into the room as your father, you need to stand up for me and show me this level of respect. If you want to forego this and say, okay, the halacha is you are obligated to stand for your father, which means when you have children, like grandchildren, you need to be teaching them that they need to stand for you because you are their father. However, I'm going to forego my honor. I'm going to release obligation. I'm going to tell you, you don't have to
this is
stand
probably
for
a
me.
dumb this is probably a dumb question, but what if the father walks into the child's bedroom while the child's asleep, or any room where the child is asleep, and the child does not know?
Then how could they be aware that they're not standing? You have to be aware of this. So if you go to check on them while they're sleeping, they're not spending time in Gehenna because they didn't stand up while they were sleeping and they didn't know you were there. So foregoing the honor. So you're teaching your children the halacha. This is, you have to stand for me. This is a requirement. However, I'm releasing you from your obligation. I'm telling you, don't feel bad, like in this question, if you don't stand up for me. I'm giving you permission. You don't have to. This is how I can forego my honor. The halacha is you're required to stand, but I'm telling you, I'm not requiring that of you. So those who teach that Judaism is transactional, I'm going to get this reward for fulfilling this mitzvah. I'm going to get this punishment for falling short. This has significance because there are those who will teach, even though I, as a father, could tell my children, don't worry, I don't want to be this strict. I don't want to be militant. I don't want to force you to stand up every time I walk into the room, even though this is the requirement. What if I'm carrying things from this room to that? I walk in and out 12 times. You're a child sitting there playing a video game or whatever. Now you have to stand up 12 times. This is why it's saying, okay, I can release you of this obligation. I'm not going to be this strict. I'm not going to require you to. You as a father, as a father can forego your honor and release them of this obligation. There are those who will say, I don't want to. Even though I don't want to be strict, I don't want to make you do it. I believe you get a reward for each mitzvah that you comply with. Therefore, I want you to stand up for me, not because I'm getting any pleasure out of watching your obedience, because I want you to have the reward in Olam Haba. I want you to get 12 extra brownie points for the 12 times you stood up for me. So, teach the halacha. Yes, you are required to stand. However, you do have the ability to forego your honor and say you don't have to. But there are people who want to be strict on this because it is tied to a mitzvah. So, we don't really want to create the the slippery slope of, well, if I don't have to be strict on this mitzvah, can I also be lenient on some other Torah commandment? But if you're going to be strict or being lenient on this with your children, at least teach that it is required. But if you want to be more lenient, you are allowed to say, okay, I'm not going to require this of you, but do not teach them that it's not really a requirement because it's a very important one, very serious one. All right, where were we? What are we on? 9?
At ease, children.
As you were.
As you
okay.
were.
But we were talking about the slippery slope, right? Okay, look at Halacha 9. A person who strikes at a son who has attained majority. So it can start, okay, I don't have to stand when he walks in the room. Dad's cool, he's chill, you know. Now, can we joke with each other? Can we make fun of each other? Can we start using our speech? Can it lead to a person striking his father? Asfa shalom, imagine this. Once the person has attained majority, um, there are physical signs that a person displays. Today, we don't inspect for these signs. We usually call it bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah for a girl. So we just assume that it's 12 and 13. They used to inspect. There was actually signs. A person who strikes a son who has attained majority, which means he has achieved this age or these signs, he should be placed under a ban of ostracism for transgressing this charge. Leviticus 19:14. Do not place a stumbling block in front of the blind. So, what does it mean to place a stumbling block in front of the blind? Do not cause them to spiritually transgress. In this instance, by hitting the son, he has reached a, after he has reached adulthood, the father is provoking him to perhaps respond in kind or to dishonor him in some way. So if you strike your son, this could lead to him disrespecting you or attacking you physically. This is causing him to violate commandments. So this is what it means when it says you're placing a stumbling block in front of them. It's as if you cause them to stumble and fall. You know, just like if you don't build a guardrail, then it's as if we place a stumbling block and we push them over. So don't provoke people, don't put them in situations that could lead them to doing something that they can be punished for. Okay, 10. When a person's father or mother lose control of their mental faculties, their son should try to conduct his relationship with them according to their mental condition until God has mercy upon them. If it is impossible for him to remain with them because they have become very deranged, he should leave them and depart and charge others with caring for them in an appropriate manner. So if they need help, I don't know if they have dementia or something, it's your obligation to take care of it. If it's going to lead to you not being able to, this is going to lead to you not respecting them, then we should try to get, you know, in this day and age, you can have a professional nurse do it, assisted living, these types of things. And then we get into, okay, well, who has to pay for it if we're paying someone else? If you have that ability, you're obligated there too to fund that. Scroll. Number 11. A mamzer. This is a child of an inappropriate relationship. A mamzer is obligated to honor and fear his father, even though he is not liable for striking him or cursing him until he repents. Even when his father was a wicked person who violated many transgressions, we must honor him and fear him. So we learned in the last chapter, the one before that, when this Jewish person is being on his way out to be executed, a person could strike him, take a jab at him, hit him in the head, cause physical pain. You're not liable because he separated himself from the community. He's considered to be no longer Jewish because of the crime he committed. He's been convicted in court. But you, as the son, are not allowed to strike him. You are not even allowed to make fun of him. You can't even insult him as your fellow Jews are bashing him in the head as he's being carried out to be executed. You can't even say anything that might embarrass him because you are the child of this person. So even this wicked person who violated many transgressions, you have to honor and fear him. Now, hopefully none of us have a father this wicked, but if he sees his father violate Torah law, he should not tell him, Father, you have transgressed the Torah law. Instead, he should tell him, Father, is it not such and such written in the Torah? As if he is asking him rather than warning him. So if you see your father doing something they're not supposed to do, don't come and say, "How dare you do this?" You should know better. The Torah says this and that. This is not showing him respect. Instead, maybe you should act as if you don't know. Say, what if you see your father eating a cheeseburger? What is you should ask him, what does it mean when it says don't cook a kid in its mother's milk? Does this mean only the kid, the goat, or does this apply to sheep also? You can get him thinking, oh man, I forgot about that. Yeah, we're not supposed to be doing this. Actually, it does extend to cows also. So then rabbinically, they expounded on this. You can get him to come to the realization, like, yeah, I'm not supposed to be doing this. Now, in this example, everybody knows you're not supposed to be the cheeseburger,
By using Socratic method.
whatever that means. I don't know what Socratic means, but I get your point.
It
So,
means that you ask a line of questions to for in order for somebody to draw their own conclusions on
right.
themselves.
So if it was something less obvious that he didn't know about, that you were educated, you know about, ask him and get him to come to it on his own conclusion. So he doesn't look like you're chastising me. Because how about this example? There's lots of things that are popular. So people will come around and say, you're not allowed to do that. That's against halacha. You're not allowed to do it. Those of us that know halacha, we can tell you actually it's not against halacha. It's just a minhag, and so they might he might be in this case. So you can come to him and say, don't you know we're not allowed to do that? He's like, actually, you're telling me this? You're the child. I'm the father. It's 100% allowed, and this is why. So how are you going to come to him and tell him that you know the law to your father? So get him to come to it on his own, and then now he's teaching you. Well, I understand why you're asking me about this. Many people think this is not allowed, but actually, according to halacha, this has always been, allowed. It's a very popular minhag to do what you're questioning me about, but the actual halacha, it's permitted. So this is how you bring it about, like Moshe was bringing up. So even if a wicked person is violating transgressions, even if he is wrong for doing so, how we approach him, we have to be mindful of. Okay, 12. When a person's father tells him to violate the words of the Torah, whether he tells him to transgress a negative commandment or not to fulfill a positive commandment, even if all that is involved is a point of rabbinic law. Siri is listening to me. I think it's trying to find answers to the things I'm talking about. Even if all that is involved is a point of rabbinic law, which we're supposed to follow, just because it's rabbinic doesn't mean that it's not authoritative. He should not listen to him, as can be inferred from Leviticus. A person must fear his mother and father and keep my Sabbaths. Implied is that all are obligated in honoring me, obligated to Hashem. So even though you're supposed to honor your father can't tell you to go and violate Torah commandments or even the rabbinic commandments that the Torah told us to follow. Torah tells us to follow the ruling of the court. What that court is the Sanhedrin. Once they ruled something, the Torah is telling us to follow that. So yes, even though we have to honor our father, we have to honor what the Torah says. So we can't say, well, I have to honor my father, and my father told me to dishonor Torah, so therefore I'm not liable for dishonoring Torah because I was complying with what my father told me. How do we know we have to honor our father? Because the Torah tells us. So we have to honor the Torah. So that I was just following orders is not an excuse here. If he's telling you to violate Torah things. Okay, 13. The following laws apply when a person's father tells him, draw water for me, and he has the opportunity to perform a mitzvah. If it is possible for a mitzvah to be performed by others, they should perform it, and he should concern himself with honoring his father. For we do not negate the observance of one mitzvah because of the observance of another mitzvah. If there are no others able to perform the other mitzvah, he should perform the mitzvah and neglect his father's honor, for he and his father are obligated to perform the mitzvah. Torah study surpasses the honoring of one's father and mother. Okay, so the following laws apply when a person's father tells him, draw water for me, and he has the opportunity to perform a mitzvah. So you're complying with the mitzvah to honor your father by drawing water for him because that's what he's telling you to do. This is speaking about a mitzvah whose observance cannot be delayed. The burial of a corpse. If the observance of the mitzvah can be delayed, one should honor one's parents and then observe the mitzvah. So if the observance of the mitzvah can be delayed, if you're doing a mitzvah that can be done later, your father interrupts and asks you to get him a drink, then you should stop what you're doing and get it for him so that you can honor him. If it's not possible to delay the mitzvah, then you should get somebody up, ask for someone else to do it. Does that make anybody have any questions on that? 13. No, that's what we just did. 14. If a person's father tells him, bring me a drink of water. Okay, that's what it's. Okay, I have draw water for me. This says, so that's what we just did, 14? Okay, 14, no, here we go. Okay, if a person's father tells him, bring me a drink of water, and his mother tells him, bring me a drink of water, which one do you comply with? You have to honor your parents, so which one gets the priority? He should overlook his mother's honor and honor his father first. For both he and his mother are obligated to honor his father. So if your father and your mother, they both ask you at the same time, bring me a drink, which one do you do? You have to honor your father, and your mother, as the wife of your father, also has to honor your father. So you are both commanded to honor him, so he gets the priority. So after you give him the drink, then you should still honor your mother, but your father comes first. Okay, 15. A person is obligated to honor his father's wife, even though she is not his mother, throughout his father's lifetime. For this is included in honoring his father. So this is talking about like a stepmother. You still have to honor your father, his wife, his new wife, your stepmother. That's not your mother. That's your stepmother. Are you obligated to honor her? Yes, not because you're obligated to honor your mother. It's not under that. It's under the obligation that you have to honor your father. He chose her as his wife. Therefore, you are honoring him by showing respect to her, as long as he is alive. Similarly, he should honor his mother's husband throughout her lifetime. After his parents' death, however, he is not obligated to honor their spouses.
What if the end of the marriage comes first?
Well, then you can part ways. You're no longer obligated to them. So this is in a case where you have to tolerate the new spouse. Maybe you don't like them, but you still have to show respect because that's how you show respect to your parents. The Shulchan Aruch states that even though there is no obligation for a son to continue to honor his stepmother after his father's death, it is proper for him to do so. The commentaries note that this ruling appears to be based on the words of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. This is the compiler of the Mishnah, who at the time of his death instructed his sons to continue to honor their stepmother. I'm going to assume that this was a good relationship. In the case where there's a real problem with the new spouse, the new stepmother, the new wife, you have to be tolerant because you honor your father. Once he dies, if this relationship cannot be sustained, then you are free from your obligation. But like in the case of Yehuda Hanasi, the father made a request that you do so, so you for sure have to comply with that in his lifetime. Afterwards, you're free from this obligation. It is, however, a rabbinical decree that the person is obligated to honor his oldest brother as he is obligated to honor his father. And
Dang.
that concludes chapter 6. Okay, what time did we start? We were 10 minutes late when we started. 40, so that's been 40 minutes. So we actually have time. We can continue for a while. Do you guys want to do 7? And my suggestion is to do it on have Raleigh Resnick teach part 7. Any questions on 6? No? Okay, good. And here's what I recommend everybody here and watching later on YouTube or wherever you see this. Everybody should be knowledgeable in Mishnah Torah. It's the only complete codification of Halacha that we have to this very day. There has not been another one. It's the only work of its kind. My personal opinion is that no Jew should get through high school without going through Mishnah Torah at least one time. They shouldn't be able to graduate high school without getting through this. So everybody should go through this and learn this stuff. We're doing Hilchot Mamrim because this is the only place you're going to find it. You're not going to find this in Shulchan Aruch, which deals with things in the diaspora. We don't have the Sanhedrin in the diaspora, so you're not going to see how this stuff functions. So you can do 1 chapter a day. It'll take 3 years to get through it. I recommend everybody do the 3 chapters a day, so that way you can get through it in 1 year. You can keep track. We have the High Holy Days coming up, so if you start now, today, then when you're about however far. If you're halfway, 6 months into it, you're halfway through the High Holy Days, then you're halfway through the Mishnah Torah. If you're doing the 3 chapters a day, because you'll get through it in one year. If it's a leap year, we have an extra month, so it'll take even less time. But here's how I recommend you do it. Hilchot Mamrim. Because we're already on Chabad.org, we can already find it. Valley, G-H, guess how you spell his name. Resnick. This will bring him up. So normally, if you're not already on, just start typing Rambam in the search bar, and it'll bring up the daily study. You can click on that, and then you scroll at daily tracks. If you want to do audio or video, which is how I recommend, then it'll ask you to choose your path, 1 chapter a day, 3 chapters a day. Just click 3 chapters a day, and then it'll bring up what I'm going to show you, different rabbis that are teaching that day's study. But I'm not looking for today's 3 chapters. I'm looking for this specific chapter, 7. So this is why I'm typing Raleigh Resnick. Rambam, 3 chapters a day. Raleigh Resnick. So whatever day of the year he taught this on, there's the calendar. It'll show you. This is not necessarily today's, but we're looking for the specific chapter. So there's different rabbis here. So these guys are spending an hour and 20 minutes. He's not just reading. You saw how quickly we ran through one chapter with my commentary. It took 40 minutes. So Raleigh, you see, is 22 minutes. He's just going to read you the text. He'll only tell you what you need to know. We're going to use this Hebrew word. This is what this word means. So I'm not going to translate this word every time we use it in these chapters. So this word in Hebrew means this in English. And then we're going to read the text. And you're going to have the text underneath it where you can follow along and read while he's reading it to you. So he doesn't really deviate from the text. He only deviates from it to tell you what you absolutely need to know. So you can see 3 chapters, he's going to get you through it in 22 minutes. So I recommend going through Raleigh. And then sometimes people, you'll have a 3-minute class. You can't do 3 chapters in 3 minutes. They're just giving you a summary of what the 3 chapters are going to be about. So I highly recommend Raleigh Resnick. Okay, but yeah.
Hilchot Mamrim. Today we open a new set of law, the law of the rebels.
Does everyone have audio? Can you hear him talking?
Yeah.
Okay, so for these 3 chapters is Hilchot Mamrim, chapter 1, 2, and 3, which we've covered. So we'll go to the next, chapter 4, 5, and 6. We just did 6. We have 7 is next. So 7 completes Hilchot Mamrim. Since we're doing 3 chapters a day, you'll get chapter 7, which will complete that for our purpose in this series. And then he'll give you the first 2 chapters of the next section. So I want to go through and let him teach chapter 7.
Hilchot Mamrim, Perek Shvi, the seventh and final chapter in the laws of Mamrim, those who rebel, the rebellious ones.
Okay, so another feature that you can do is right here. You can go if he's talking slow. If you have a 20-minute drive, this is a 22-minute video, or this particular one is 36 minutes. If you're 20 minutes away, you can go 1.5 times the speed, and so you can get through it a little faster.
And this chapter the Rambam dedicates to an individual known as a Ben Soirer Umayra, a child, a son, literally translated, who is wayward and rebellious. The child, their actions themselves, as we're going to see, do not seem to be so drastic and dramatic, but the Torah will issue a punishment, as we are going to learn, Ben Soirer Umayra Amba Torah and Esparsha by Skila. The Torah prescribes the punishment if for this child as the court stoning this individual. And that is because the Torah sees into the future and sees that an individual who acts in this precise, specific manner will eventually wind up killing somebody. So the Torah tells us the punishment, but asks the Rambam, where is the actual prohibition? Where do we know you're not allowed to do it? As we've learned previously, in the Torah, to be liable, the Torah has to actually tell you not to do it, not just tell you the punishment if you do violate it. The Torah tells us, lo yiseichal al hadam. Literally translated, that means do not eat blood on the blood. But it's understood to mean, and we've had various understandings of the sentence throughout, don't eat in a way that will bring ultimately to bloodshed. And that's actually the act of eating and drinking, which is going to make him a ben Seirer Umayra. He's going to be liable for the death penalty, not because he's killed anybody, but because what he's doing will eventually bring to that. That will be the ramification. Now, the words of the Torah, Zoilel v'saveya, literally it means that he is gluttonous, that he's piggish, he's savage in his eating. They are understood through our oral Torah to mean eating meat and drinking wine in a ravagous, savageous manner. And let us now go through the details, halacha base. So
I want to read you what I have here in the introduction to this chapter. Okay, I guess it is here. This is what he just went through. So notice here, there's a difference of opinion. The Torah commands the death of the child who's rebellious. The death penalty is called for. We're going to see examples of where in the Halacha, if the father, let's say, who's the victim of the child that struck him, if he goes to the court and says, the Torah says this child is supposed to be put to death for being a rebellious son, I'm the victim of the crime, I want him executed. The court said if either one, father or the mother, says I don't want him executed, court would not do it. So even though the Torah itself calls for the execution. So this is the difference between halacha and mitzvot. The halacha is how do we enact this mitzvah, and they have a lot of authority. But you see here in this introduction, picture, there's a difference of opinion among our sages if the judgment of a wayward and rebellious son ever took place. Okay, so there are those that said, well, no, we never did this, we never executed anybody, because we don't do that type of thing. But some maintain that such a judgment was never issued. Indeed, from all the particulars mentioned by the Rambam, one could understand that it could be impossible for such a judgment to have been issued. Because the way it takes a lot to execute somebody. You have to have so many judges and witnesses and pre-warning and all of this. So you can infer that it would have never happened. Others maintain that they know of an instance where an individual was executed because of this transgression. So this is Sanhedrin 71a. Rather, there has never been a stubborn and rebellious son, and there will never be one in the future. Pretty bold statement. There's never been the stiff-necked people, and never in the future, never will one ever be. And why then was the passage relating to the stubborn, rebellious son written in Torah? If that's the case, why do we need the mitzvah? Why does the Torah need to tell us about this? So that you may expound upon understandings of Torah and receive reward for your learning. Rabbi Yonatan says, This is not so. I saw one. I was once in a place where a stubborn and rebellious son was condemned to death. I even sat on his grave after he was executed. So there's people who will say in the Talmud, oh, no one was ever, we're perfect. We don't behave like this. And the Torah is only telling us that this is a theoretical, hypothetical situation that actually never came to fruition. But there's witnesses that say, yes, it did. It actually did happen. I don't know if it comes up in this chapter, but you probably heard a lot of people say, oh, the Sanhedrin never executed anyone. If a Sanhedrin executed one person every 70 years, that was a bloody court. In order to say it was a rare occurrence that once in every 70 years we execute someone, because we almost never did it. These people have not read Mishnah Torah or the sections of the Talmud that talk about this. They used to execute people for things that the Torah did not even call for a death penalty from. We've talked about this in this section. If theft is getting out of hand, you can suspend Torah commandments to execute people for theft, until the people rebelling get the message. Okay, we're not going to tolerate this society. They're executing people for stealing things, grapes, less than one smallest coin. So they absolutely did execute people. It's mentioned in there they killed either 8,000 people in 8 days or 800 people in 8 hours, something like that. They killed a lot of people. And then you could say, okay, well, that one court was a bloody court, but it happened quite a bit. So the reference to this that everybody always says, if they killed one person every 70 years, that was considered a bloody court. This is in Machot 7a. A Sanhedrin rabbinic court that executes one in 7 years is considered to be destructive. This is a destructive court. 7 years. This is someone's opinion. They're saying if they're killing people every 7 years, this is a mean court. Then Rabbi Eleazar ben Azariah says, you think it's a bad court that's doing this every 7 years. If it's every 70 years, then they should get this title of a murderous court. Then Rabbi Akiva comes in and says, well, you know what? If I was on the Sanhedrin, theoretically, if I was on the Sanhedrin, when we had the authority to put people in court, because, they moved over to Yavna, no man would ever be executed, because I would ask him questions. You have to have witnesses. I would ask the witnesses, did you really see this? Are you sure? Can you describe what he was wearing? I would ask so many questions that that the witness would have to eventually say, I'm not sure. Well, you're not sure? Okay, well then we can't accept your testimony. So if, hypothetically, theoretically, if I was on that Sanhedrin, we would have never executed anybody. And then immediately after that, the next rabbi comes in and says, if you were on that Sanhedrin, murder would be rampant, because there would be no deterrent to not go out and kill people that you're mad at, because we know you're on the Sanhedrin and you're going to do this. So nobody's ever going to be executed. So why not? You're setting up a system where we have in some places now in America where why not walk in and just steal 1,000 things? The police won't arrest you for it because the prosecutors won't prosecute you for it, because the law is if it's not $1,000 as a theft, you're not going to be prosecuted. So this notion that this is a historically accurate thing that we have records of, that we counted, well, this one was executed, and then it was this many years before the next one was, and it was never every 70 years. It's literally not in the text. They're taking this discussion and trying to say this is how many people were executed. Not historically accurate. It's them giving opinions on this. So, but there is a debate. There are people who say it never happened, and we do have an actual witness that testified, yes, it did happen, and I saw it. Okay, so now he's getting into, I think he just read Halacha Aleph, because he said Halacha Beit, right? But I'm going to play the video so we can follow along with the text. I'm going to show you how you're not driving and listening to it on audio. You can follow along with what he's reading, and you'll see he's right on.
It's eating and drinking that brings a skila liability to this person. It needs to be very specific as per the oral Torah. In the oral Torah, as transmitted, we have the exact ways in which this individual needs to eat and drink to be liable for skila to be stoned by the court. Number one, he needs to steal money from his father. Then he needs to go, take that money and purchase meat and wine at a really good price that's very cheap. Then, number two, he needs to consume that meat and drink that wine outside of his father's home, outside his father's jurisdiction. He needs to eat it with a bunch of lowlives, as a group of thugs. Number three, he needs to eat the meat while it's raw-ish. Not too raw, not too well done, not too well cooked, right? Medium rare, sort of really on the rare side of medium rare. And that's the way thieves eat their meat, on the go. They're always on the go. They don't have time to fully cook it. And he has to drink the wine that's been diluted already. It can't be in its state where it's not drinkable at its full strength. That's the way when drunks drink their wine, then that's the way he has to drink it. And again, he's eating and drinking this because he's going to eventually get addicted to this lifestyle. He's going to wind up having to sustain this lifestyle, he'll have to steal, he'll have to become a thief or robber, and he'll eventually wind up murdering somebody. He has to drink at least 50 dinars weight of meat, which is approximately a little bit less than half a pound of meat. Not such a big steak. He has to drink half a lug of wine, which is about 3/4 of a cup of wine, all in one sitting. If he's missing any of these, he is not liable. So if he stole money from his father, but then he ate the food in his father's home, or if he stole the money from other people, did I say if he stole the meat? If he stole the money from his father and he ate it in his father's jurisdiction, or he stole the money from other people and ate it in a piggish manner, but he ate it with other people at his father's home, that doesn't count because he has to have stolen it from his father. Also, he's not liable, even if he stole it from his father. He ate it with others. But when he ate it, he was eating it as part of a mitzvah, even if it's a rabbinic mitzvah. Or he ate it as part of violating another prohibition of the Torah, even if it's a rabbinically prohibited Torah, which means as follows. Let's say he's eating it, and he's eating it at a wedding. Well, guess what? The meal of a wedding, that's a mitzvah. Or he's eating it, it's the meat he happens to be eating is a meiser sheni, specific tithes that have to be eaten. There's a mitzvah to eat them in Jerusalem. He's eating them with a bunch of thugs. He fulfilled all the criteria. But he's eating it as part of a mitzvah. That doesn't count. Also, he can't be violating a sin in so doing. Let's say the meat he's eating is treif, it's nevela, it hasn't been slaughtered properly, it's not a healthy animal, it's a creepy crawly animal, or maybe just rabbinically it's a fast day that you're not allowed to eat that, and he's violating a rabbinic prohibition by eating now. Well, the Torah specifically tells us that einenu shemea b'kolenu, he's not listening to our voice, meaning to our voice, the mommy and daddy, the father, the parents' voice. If he is not listening to God's voice at the same time, meaning he's violating a prohibition, he's not a ben Torah Amora. He has to be solely not listening to his parents, solely stealing and eating in a gluttonous manner that is against the will of his parents, not against the will of God as well. Okay, so those are the details. Let's say Halacha Gimel, he ate a lot, but he didn't eat meat. He just didn't eat meat from an animal, he ate meat from a bird. Well, he's not liable. But if he did eat meat from an animal, he just didn't eat enough, and he finished off the proper amount as necessary. We said the 50 dinars weight worth. He ate a little bit of chicken, bird meat, that's okay. If he drank any other drinks other than wine, he drank Coca-Cola, that doesn't count. He has to drink wine to be liable. Halacha Daled. He's not liable if he ate meat that's completely raw, or if he drank wine that has not been diluted at all. Why? Because that's a one-off binge. You cannot generally become an established pattern, an addict, someone who becomes addicted to this lifestyle by eating that. The same would be true, by the way, of eating meat that you've salted and the salt has sat there for 3 days, or drinking grape juice that has not yet been fermented, just raw grape juice. Those are not the type of eatings that will eventually cause and bring about theft and bloodshed. So it has to.
Okay, so if you were following along on the screen with my cursor, you see he's reading the halachot, and he doesn't really deviate for anything other than to just to tell you what he's reading. So you can follow along with the text if you're on the website watching it. If you're just driving, or if you're at the gym listening to headphones, whatever, you can trust he's not going to be inserting opinions. He's not giving you midrashim. He's not just summarizing, leaving things out. you're getting the actual text of the book on audio or video. So that's why I recommend him. And throughout the year, there's only like, I don't know, 5 days or something where he's not there. So you'll have to choose one of the longer ones or one of the shorter ones. But for 95, 99% of the year, he's there and you can do the whole Mishnah Torah with him.
To be these specific things.
I'm going to put this on the screen so rather than following, I can follow along in the book. That way, if I need to pause and say anything, I can. You can watch him from here.
Okay. Now, exactly what age are we referring to halacha hey? Now, when is a ben Saira Amira? At what age? If he's under bar mitzvah, obviously he can't be liable for his actions. And if he's a mature adult, then he's his own person. He's not living in his parents' house. He's not responsible. He says he's responsible for his own actions. He's not going to be put to death by stoning by the court just for eating and drinking something. So there's a very small window of time. It is from the time that he turns bar mitzvah, he's 13, with the physical signs of maturity, specifically the physical.
Remember, I talked about this, how we used to, the age of majority, there's physical signs. I don't like talking about it. It makes me uncomfortable. But this is what it's talking about. Now, today, we just say bar and bat mitzvah, 12 for a girl, 13 for a boy. But that's not how it always was. You used to have to actually physically check people to find out. You know, like today, we have an ID, a driver's license. Okay, this person's 18. He's an adult. Because here, the law is 18. Okay, he's 21 years old. This is how we check. Now he's able to buy alcohol because he's 21. Didn't used to be that way. It was not just 12 and 13. There were physical signs, which he's going to talk about, which is another reason why I'm glad he's the one teaching this chapter.
Signs that we've learned are there have to be 2 hairs present on his reproductive organ. From that moment until the point that his reproductive organ is now surrounded and covered with hair. At that point, once he reaches that point of maturity, he is not put to death. He is an independent man. So that's the window of time. Now, that's true, halacha vav, but it's actually, within that window, really he only has 3 months. And that is really from the time that he's 13 and he has those 2, that sign of maturity of those 2 hairs on his reproductive organ, and 3 months later. Why? Why is 3 months the maximum amount of time? After that, he can no longer be a ben Saira Amira. So the Rambam tells us, because there's a sentence which tells us that ish ben Saira Amira, he has to be a man. The Torah calls him a man and not a father, which means from the time that he can be a theoretical father. What we mean by a theoretical father is that a woman starts visibly being pregnant, showing her pregnancy 3 months after conception. So from the moment he's bar mitzvah and has the sign of maturity, 3 months later, he is a theoretical father. So he's no longer a man. He doesn't fit into this specific designation of this law. Now, it's possible for that window of time to be less than 3 months because he might have reached full maturity, as we said, have hair growing around his entire organ within that 3-month window. That is a possibility as well, but it cannot be more than 3 months. Okay? So we have the age, we have what he has to do in order to be liable for this stoning. Now, what's the actual process? Let's go through the process, halacha zayin. Okay? Here's what happens. The parents bring their son to the court, a court of 3 judges, and witness testify that he stole.
So with things like conversions, you can have a court of Hilchot, 3 ordinary people. There is a difference between an Amcha Eretz who doesn't know anything, and Chaverim, religious associate. So you can't be an Amcha Eretz on this court of Hilchot, Gimel Hilchot, 3 ordinary people. So what's the standard to be on this court for conversions? The understanding is that you have to be Shomer Shabbat and you have to keep kosher. So there is cases where you can have a court of 3 people. That is not this court. This court requires that the 3 judges have smicha, because we're dealing with a serious thing, dishonoring your father and your mother. So this is not just any court. This is a special court. And it's going to escalate to a death penalty case, which requires 23 judges. So I just wanted to point out, because many of us are dealing with conversions, you've heard about court of 3 judges. That's not just any three people. This is all 3, because like for Sanhedrin, you just had to have 1 person with smicha. This is 3 judges with smicha, not 3 Hilchot.
Stole money. He purchased wine. He purchased meat. He ate and he drank the meat and wine in the prescribed manner, in the prescribed fashion, after being warned by witnesses not to do so. That is phase 1. Now he's going to be liable for the standard malchus liability, lashes. The Torah tells us, he will warn them, he won't listen to them. That's phase 1. Okay? But that's not the end of the process. Now he does it again. He steals more money, he buys more meat than wine, he eats and drinks the wine in the prescribed fashion. Now the parents bring him back to the court. This time it's a Beis Din, it's a court of 23 judges, because they're going to be sentencing him for the capital punishment. With witnesses now who testify for what he did. They can be the same witnesses, or they can be a different set of witnesses. And this is phase 2, the final phase. Okay? Now, we need to check before he's going to be sentenced to be death. For the capital punishment. Number 1, has his reproductive organ now been fully covered with hair? If it has, now he's no longer within that window. And is it more than 3 months since he's been bar mitzvah? Okay, if he meets all these criteria, if he's within that window of time, then he is put to death by stoning. And that stoning must be in the presence of the original 3 judges. It says, Benenu zeh, our son, this one, the one that you lashed, that you sentenced to be lashed last time, you got to be present here. Okay, so it's very particular and very specific, and as many of us are familiar, we are told in the Talmud, according to at least one opinion, that this never happened. Halacha ches. If the father or the mother forgave, they reneged on their claim before the verdict was handed down by the court, their son is not put to death. Halacha tes.
Okay, he's moving on to the next halakha, but I want to go over that. Remember, he reiterated there's one opinion that this never happened. However, there's also a testimony in the Talmud that yes, it did. A person saw it happen and stood on the grave afterwards. So here, again, he's just going into the text, which says if a father and mother forgave him before he was sentenced, he is not liable. And I think they go over this more, that it's either one can get him out of it. And this gives this impression that, we're very lenient, which of course we were, but this gives this impression that we never executed anybody. It's not an accurate depiction. I mean, what court on the planet that has the ability to execute people do you think that doesn't take it seriously? So the commentary here says, again, if father and mother forgave him before he was sentenced, he's not liable. Meaning if you're in the process of the trial and their mercies overcome them, even though they initiated the court proceedings against him, in the midst of the trial, their mercies overwhelmed them and they forgave him, then he's not executed. If, however, he had already been sentenced, he is executed, even if his parents desire to forgive him. Once the court makes a ruling, and we've talked about this between the difference between minhagim and halachot, you can make minhagim on things that the court did not rule on. Once the court rules, this is the halacha. This is now binding on the entire Jewish people. Can't say, well, that law doesn't apply to me. Once the court has ruled something, and this kid is to be put to death, even though the people that brought the case, the actual parents say, I forgive him, I don't want him to be executed. Well, that's good. That's nice that you did that, but our judgment rules. Our judge is now the halakha. This is the law, and he's going to be executed. And as we see, there are testimonies that they did do this. So the people sugarcoating it that we never executed anybody, probably never even did execute one person every 70 years. I don't think it's true. Okay, then he went on to the next one.
If he escapes before the verdict is handed down, and now they catch him, but by now he's fully mature, his reproductive organ has been now fully covered with hair, now he is not going to be put to death. But if he escaped after the verdict was handed down, he is put to death even if it's many years later. He might be an old man by now. But the general rule is that once a verdict is handed down, he's a dead man. That's a dead man walking. Literally, the expression is he has no blood, and therefore...
And this is why you're punished if you strike another Jew. But if he's already been sentenced and you strike him, there's no punishment for you because he's not a Jew. He separated himself from the community. He's no longer one of us. But as his son, you can't strike him because he's still your father, and you can't humiliate him because even though he's a dead man walking, what if he repented? That's between him and Hashem. If he did teshuvah. Now, if that's the case that he repented, you're insulting him with your speech. That you're having an effect on him, and you're not allowed to do it because you can be punished for that. But this is a legal proceeding. We don't rule. The court doesn't rule whether he did teshuvah or not. That's between him and Hashem. So the legal proceeding just rules what you do, not what you think in your mind, not what you believe. So legally, we're dealing with: can you strike him? Can you insult him? Can you embarrass him? So It's an important distinction.
For it's just a matter of catching him and a matter of actually handing out the sentence, the verdict that was given by the courts. Halacha Yud. If the parents have a disagreement as to whether they should bring their son to the court to begin with, to establish him as a ben Sarah Meira, maybe the father says yes, the mother says no, the mother says no, the mother says yes, the father says no. Either way, he does not become a ben Sarah Umayra. The Torah tells us, "V'safsu by avi v'imai." His father and mother have to grab hold of him. Also, he does not become a ben Sarah Umayra if his parent, either parent, is either an amputee.
Why is that? Anybody know? Take a guess. You're probably going to get it wrong. I'm saying that so that when you get it wrong, you don't feel embarrassed and say the stupid answer. You're probably not going to guess it, but maybe you will. Why can this person not be convicted if the person is an amputee?
Maybe they need someone to take care of the parent.
You know, that's a good guess. It's not right. But when
I'm sorry, go ahead.
My first thought was kind of along what you're saying. Well, they need help. You know, my first thought was, well, this person is already a disabled person. You know, we have to show compassion. So we don't want to actually, we're going to show leniency, you know, in this example, because we have pity for this person. Person's an amputee. They're already struggling. That was my thought, which was also incorrect. Salah, what's your guess?
Would it have something to do with the fact that because they are not intact on earth, that's in a way perceived as Hashem's judgment from someplace else, or that they wouldn't be considered pure or like unblemished?
Your thought process was kind of in line with us, what we thought, and it is not true. But you're kind of getting it right because they are literally not intact. They are literally missing a hand. Why is that important? He's going to give you the answer, and it's going to go on beyond just the hand. It's going to cover the deaf, one who doesn't hear. It's going to cover the other reasons why. But it just goes to show you a simple sentence, which he's going to tell you, how literally they take this and how much they dissect it. Yeah, go ahead, guess. What's your guess?
Does it have anything to do with, you know, does the like an amputee fall in line with the, you know, you're not supposed to humiliate like an orphan, widow, or convert? Would an amputee fall in that group of people?
Well, you're not supposed to humiliate
a disabled person,
even if the person's not disabled. Even if they're not a convert, not an orphan, not a widow, you're still not allowed to humiliate. It's equivalent to shedding blood. So it's not because, oh, you're humiliating an amputee. You're not allowed to humiliate anybody. It's literally because they are missing the hand. Any other guesses? Even though I kind of just gave it away. All right, but it just goes to show you how a simple sentence, when you're reading Torah, when you're reading the Parsha, you're reading sentence after sentence after sentence. But this is how much they take a sentence and they apply it literally. This is why Pashat is so important. So here's the actual answer.
They're missing an arm. They're lame. They can't walk well. Either of them are mute, can't speak. Deaf, they cannot see. Deaf, they mute, blind, they cannot see. I'm sorry, deaf, they cannot hear. He's not a ben Sarah Meira. The sentence tells us. It says, V'safsu say they have to grab him, meaning they have to have hands, the parents. V'itziu say they have to bring him out. They have to be able to walk. They have to va'amru. They have to be able to say. They can't be mute. The sentence continues, Banenu zeh, this son, our son, they have to be able to see him. And then, he doesn't listen to our voice, so we have to be able to talk. These are the specifications of this law. Halacha Yud Aleph A.
So, I mean, to strike your parent, I mean, can I hit you with my shoulder, you know? What about my foot? Can I kick you? I mean, it says, you know, your hand to strike him, you know, and bring him out. If you don't have arms, then how can you bring him out if you don't have arms? So they take this stuff very literally. So,
you could hit them with the knobs.
You could. So that would be a court case. But one thing they could argue is he doesn't qualify. He doesn't have hands. You know, how can you bring him out without a hand to grab him and bring him out? So these are the types of things they could argue, and they do it in other places too. I just thought it was interesting how they'll take every little thing here, say it's literally a requirement. If it is in Torah, if it is written, every single word, that is a requirement. You can't just gloss over this stuff. At least they didn't on the court. So they derive a lot of things from their proof texts from other places outside of Torah. Well, this is what the psalmist means when he says this, and this is how they quote. This is what the halakha should be when they're debating. We should enact the law because this is what it means. Psalms say this. The Proverbs say this. This is what it means. They'll take this stuff very literally. Now, this is why you can disagree. I say, I don't think they're interpreting this right. I don't think this is what the psalmist actually meant. I think this is more whatever, allegorical. However, it doesn't matter if they disagree. If you disagree with how they came to the conclusion, as we just heard, once they come to the conclusion, this is the sentence, you cannot disobey it. You can be unhappy about it. You can think they were misguided, what they used to conclude what the law is. But once that's the law, that is the law. So even if the parents don't want the child executed, hey, you had your chance to speak up. We ruled. This is the verdict. We can't overturn it. Requires a new Sanhedrin to overturn our ruling. It would be weakening the authority of the court, which they're not going to do.
A daughter, a girl, or someone where you're not sure of their specific gender, a tumtum or an androgynous, they cannot become a ben Sarah. It's not the norm for them to become involved in this lifestyle, this gluttonous eating and drinking, addicted.
Tumtum, androgynous, these are ones where you either don't know if it's a male or female, or because there's actual skin covering the organ, so you can't physically see, or they might be both. They might actually have both. So then, this is one of the examples where it comes up. Okay, well, if they have both, they could be a man. Are they obligated to put on tefillin? But they could be a woman. Maybe they're not. Do we release them for their obligation? So there's a lot of these things where these two categories, we have to decide how does it apply. So in this case, he's talking about them, and if they're ruled for a woman, then it's not usually the women that are becoming the ones. He'll articulate it better than I can paraphrase it.
Lifestyle that will bring to bloodshed. No, the Torah tells us, ben Sarah, a ben, a son, not a daughter. Halacha Yud Beis. Let's say you have a tumtum. A tumtum is, again, someone who we're not sure of his gender, but the reason you're not sure about his gender is because there's actually something covering his reproductive areas. Let's say that skin, that piece of flesh, gets ripped, and now you can tell, you know what, he is a male. He's a male. Well, can he become a ben Sarah? No. Because the Torah tells us, ben when you will have a child who is a ben Sarah, he has to have that designation of male from his birth. Halacha Yud Gimel. A ben Sarah is one of the people about whom we have learned, and we will learn, needs to be put to death. That death needs to be publicized. So the court, the Bezdin, would actually send out written messages. So-and-so was put to death by stoning in this Bezdin, in this court, because he was a Ben Sarah. That has to be, the Torah says, that everyone should hear and see it. And finally, a Ben, like anyone put to death, Halacha Yadalit, by the court, the Ben Sarah's estate belongs to his heirs. That's true of any time that the court put someone to death. Yes, they were the cause of him being put to death. And you might think, hey, maybe they only did so that he has a lot of money, this kid. They're suspect. No. They inherit the estate. Thank you, Hashem, for allowing us to conclude these laws of Mamrim. And now we head right on into the next set of laws, Hilchos Evel.
So because he's doing 3 chapters a day, we're done with that chapter. Now he's going to go on to the next 2. But you see, we went through that chapter, the way he does it, 13 minutes. For the 1 chapter. The other one was 22 minutes for 3 chapters. So you can get through this very quickly. If you don't have time to read and study it, you can do it audio while you're driving. 1 year, you can complete the entire Mishnah Torah. You'll know more than 99% of the rabbis out there. If you master Mishnah Torah, it's not to say that I mastered it. I've mastered parts of it, but without mastering any of it, just going through it one time, you will be educated on so many of these topics that many of these people have never even read. You go to synagogues and people have never even heard this stuff. They have no idea what the halakha actually is. They're just regurgitating what their rabbi told them. Their rabbi, who also never went through these topics, they're repeating things like once every 70 years we execute people, if that, and it's gonna really elevate your level no matter where you are, no matter how knowledgeable you are. It's just an amazing resource to take you to the next level. All right, so that concludes Hilchot Mamrim, all 7 chapters. How does halacha function? And now we can move on to other topics. Any questions before we stop the recording? All right, everybody,
No.
thank you for learning this, and we will see everybody in the next video, whatever that is, maybe another Talmud class. Stop sharing, stop recording.